of course. Welcome back here to the FIDM Digital Media Center, and we've been rolling with these interviews all day. We've had Keith Arnold from NBC Sports, Steve Wilfong from 27 Sports, Mike Farrell from Rivals.com, and now a very special guest. Irish fans, you'll know him well, Tim Prister, senior editor at Irish Illustrated, and 22 guys have committed to play at the University of Notre Dame so far. What do you make of this class? What's the big perspective right now?
Really did a great job of answering a lot of questions on the offensive side of the ball. I think from a depth standpoint, that's where Notre Dame really excels here on the offensive side of the ball. Not as much depth on the defensive side, but some standout players in there. Jalen Smith, the five-star linebacker, and of course Max Redfield, the five-star safety. So I don't think any school in the history of recruiting has ever answered all their questions in one recruiting class. It's just not feasible. Notre Dame went a long way toward doing that, though, with this class.
How important is it when Coach Kelly and his staff hit the recruiting trail to address those needs? They brought in 5 excellent offensive linemen, a few great linebackers, some areas that were concerned. How important is it?
Well, they did a great job, really, of building upon coming off an 8-5 season. You know, they reaped the benefits at the end of the 12-0 regular season, but mainly what you did the year before dictates what you're going to do in this recruiting class, and they made strong inroads coming off that 8-5 season. They got a boost down the stretch with the 12-0 regular season, but they did a great job of coming off that season. Now you go into next year, 2014, this is when Notre Dame should be in a position to once again land an excellent class.
Yeah, you just mentioned it, that boost from 12-0. What does something like that do for the recruiting process?
It's usually the residual benefits down the road, because as impressed as a kid can be with Notre Dame being 12-0, it's still a 18-month, 2-year process with a kid. So generally speaking, you know, you've built up that relationship over time. You would expect Notre Dame to really reap the benefits next year when they've had that full year to work on the kid.
This is becoming a really exceptional class for Coach Kelly. It's his 4th class, with kind of every class maybe being magnificent in their own right. What kind of job has him and his staff done bringing in these guys?
Well, I think Brian Kelly and his staff, we just saw Bob Diaco, he does a great job on recruiting trail, Tony Alford and all the other guys. You know, I think it's they build relationships. They know how to find the right fits for Notre Dame, which is extremely important. You know, we've heard 1,000 times before, Notre Dame is not for everybody. You've got to develop a relationship with a kid and know that he's a good fit for Notre Dame. At the end of the day, when all is said and done, are they all going to be perfect fits? Of course not. That's human nature. But I think Brian Kelly does a really good job of understanding who fits for Notre Dame. And then the other thing is, and the reason why Brian Kelly is the coach at Notre Dame, is that he's always done a great job with his staff of developing players. And we saw numerous examples of that this past season, which is why Notre Dame was able to go from 8-5 to 12-1.
Yeah, talk about the recruiting process a little bit. What's it like for some of these potential students? You've been on this beat for a very long time. What's it like? I mean, it's becoming sort of complicated at times.
Well, it is, and it's always a little bit more complicated for Notre Dame because of the academic situation. You've got to find the right fits for Notre Dame. It's difficult. You know, Little South Bend, Indiana, and Little South Bend in northern Indiana doesn't always appeal to a lot of kids, West Coast, Texas, Southeast, what have you. You have to make sure that not only do you land great players, but you land great players who are going to be comfortable and thrive and are going to get better in the Notre Dame environment, the northern Indiana environment, and that's not always easy to do. I've seen a lot of ups and downs over the years in 31 years of covering Notre Dame football. I don't get as excited as a lot of people do because I've seen the ups and downs and realize that talent isn't enough. You've got to be able to build upon that talent, and I think Brian Kelly has shown the ability to do that.
Yeah, I think they've done a great job of turning these football players into really great men. Last year we saw Kavari Russell come in, kind of the surprise start from day one, and did a fantastic job of the guys that have committed so far. Do you see maybe any of these guys stepping in and stepping out immediately?
A running back, Greg Bryant, is the signed running back at this point. I think he's in a position with Theo Riddick and Sierra Wood gone to make an impact, certainly in preseason camp. He's a big back who has some elusiveness. I think he's a guy that has an excellent opportunity, as does, of course, GA3 and the guys that are returning in the offensive backfield. You know, Jalen Smith is a tremendous athlete. He's going to have to be able to hold the point of attack at an early age if he's going to play. We saw what happened in the Alabama game, that it's going to be, you've got to be big and strong to be able to hold the point of attack, and he needs to get to that point. I see him listed at 220. He probably played closer to 210 throughout his senior season. Max Redfield is a difference maker, and Notre Dame has a bunch of safeties coming back, and certainly they have the edge because they've been in the program. But Max Redfield has difference-making athletic ability, and I think can make an immediate impact back there.
How do you see, this is shaping up to be just one of the top classes in the nation. A lot of people 3, 4, 5. How do you see it racking up against those other programs?
You know, I've never put a lot of stock in national ratings, mainly because for the bulk of the last 20 years, Notre Dame was just trying to get by the teams on their schedule, let alone playing for national titles. It's a little bit different now, having been 12-0 during the regular season. But, you know, somewhere in that top 5, I don't get too caught up in first, second, third, fifth, sixth. Those are all great classes. What you're looking to do is to find impact players, of course, first and foremost, and then find guys that can fulfill the needs that you're looking for. You mentioned 5 offensive linemen. That's a good foundation for the future. 4 receivers. Somebody will probably emerge from that group. I like Will Fuller the best. I think he brings the most ingredients, although James Onwalu is another guy that has gotten better and better during his senior year. So, you know, I would point to Bryant first and Redfield and those guys, but you never know. Michael Deeb is a guy, I love his approach to the game. Would it be better if he were 6'4" instead of 6'2"? Certainly, but he's a guy that brings a lot of attitude and a lot of positives to it.
Lastly, 22 guys, like we've mentioned a few times, committed here to play here, and it's shaping up to be a magnificent class. Just your final thoughts on what the future holds for this program.
Well, you know, again, I'm going to touch upon something I said before. I like Brian Kelly's ability to get kids to take a hard look at Notre Dame, find the ones that fit Notre Dame, and then when you do that, develop them into football players. Kavari Russell being a perfect example this past year. That, you know, Brian Kelly brings in guys that, hey, I don't know exactly where he's going to play, but I know we're going to give him a shot here. If that doesn't work, I think he can play here or here. That's significant when you have the 85 scholarship limitation, the turnover, players leaving early, players not panning out. It's important that you develop as many as you possibly can. I think he's shown the ability to do that.
Thank you, Tim, for your time. Tim Prister, senior editor at Irish Illustrated.